and reusing content is sometimes foreign to people because they feel like, oh, well, if somebody's seen it, it'll look like I'm being, lazy and not making new content. But the evergreen content should be reshared because somebody who pops into your feed, your funnels, whatever now, they may be different than the people that pop in 6 months from now. We want to make sure that we're constantly repeating ourselves so that that underlying message is consistent and always there every single time you need it to be there. And you don't have to touch it. It's very set it and forget it, hands off.
You're listening to the Establishing Your Empire Show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, creatives, and future business owners to pursue their passions, grow their organizations, and build their empire. My name is Darren Herman, and creatively, I'm best known for my photography. But business-wise, my claim to fame is growing a company from $15K per month in online sales to breaking the $1 million a month barrier. And I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how they have established their empires. All right, today I got Elizabeth on the Establishing Your Empire podcast. She's an international speaker, entrepreneur, expert marketer with decades of experience. And I think we're going to get in a lot of fun things today. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just start off. I gave a little intro there, but why don't you just give us a little background information of, who you are?
So I am actually a marketer. Like you said, I've been a marketer for 20 years and I've owned my business for 13 years. And let's see what else. I live in Florida, which I love, and I've owned multiple businesses over the years. And I really started my business because I went through a divorce at the age of 20 and I lost everything. So it really gave me a new start, and my business and the businesses I've had in the past have really given me a lot of things that, you wouldn't think of that businesses might give you. My husband has been able to work with me. We survived the recession because of my businesses. So it's definitely been something that's been good for me and my family. And it's not just a business, it's kind of almost like another member of the family.
I definitely know how that goes. So let's talk about like your very first business. Let's just back it up a little bit and tell us how you got started. Like because a lot of people don't even know how to start a business or why, so just give us a little rundown there.
Well, when I went through the divorce, I was living with my parents. They had just moved to Florida and I didn't really have anything else to do. I tried getting jobs. I was overqualified. I was underqualified. I couldn't really find anything just that fit me. And my mom said to me one day, she's like, you know what? You have to do something. Not because she wanted me like out or anything, but she saw like how restless I was and how frustrated I had become. So she said, you have to do something. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And she said, just pick 2 things you like, say them out loud. Don't even think about it. Just tell me 2 things you like, and let's just make a job. And I said, well, I like old people and computers. And she said, okay, well, where are those 2 things coexisting? And you should start getting jobs there, calling people and getting jobs there. So I started calling senior centers, which there are an abundance of in Florida. And I just started saying, hey, do you have a computer teacher? Do you have a computer lab? And this was, 13 years ago. And so at the time, there was tons of desktops in these places. They had computer labs. And they said, yeah, we'll hire you. You want to teach a class? And I was like, sure. How much do you pay? And they were like, oh, like $15 an hour, but it's only during class time. So it wasn't like, prep time or anything else. And I was only making $7 an hour as a hostess. So I had just doubled my income. So I was happy with that. And so I started doing that, and I started talking to the seniors, and then they would say, well, we have problems with our computer at home. And again, the age of desktops, they weren't going to bring it in and lug in that big old monitor and everything. So I would go to their homes, and I thought, nothing's really going to happen. Like, they're old. I can outrun them. I'm 20. I can figure this out. And nothing bad will happen to me. And I got in some precarious situations, let me tell you, but it was good overall. And I would go to their houses, and they said, well, how much do you charge? And I said, well, I don't know, like $35 an hour. And I doubled my income again, doubled my rate again. And so I kept doing, those kind of things. And over time, I started meeting other business owners. I started teaching community education. I started teaching at the college. And I just kind of grew my business from there and realized I'd become a really good marketer because of all this. And so then once I realized that, I started going back to my roots of web design, which I'd been doing for I'd been doing since I was 15. And I said, you know what, let's just build an agency also, because I can help so many small businesses with the way I've grown my business and made it successful. I can help them do that too. And so now that's what I have today, which is Absolute Marketing.
And when you decided to take that step from basically a one person shop to like an actual marketing agency, did you have just enough customers, or did you feel like you just wanted to be more legit? Like what made you change into actually having a brand, I suppose?
Well, with the small business that I ran, that was the computer repair side of things, I had so many customers. I ended up hiring people with that, and I had them going out and doing the work. And that's when I started focusing on the marketing side. And I did that as a solopreneur for a while. I kind of had to run this other thing over here and deal with all these people. And then I was like, but I really want to do this thing, And so once I sold the computer repair business to one of our employees, then I focused more on the agency and made it more. And growing it was really... It was that catch-22, right? Do I have enough clients? Do I have enough customers to get a person to bring on a team? Or do I just keep going and burn myself out, and hope that at some point I guess I'm ready for a team, And so I feel like you always have to add before you feel like it's ready. And that's what I've done the whole time. If I feel like I need somebody, I will hire them. But I also know that not everyone stays with you forever. So I've had people come and go in the team, not because they were, flighty or whatever, but because they were only there for a time, and that was fine. They might've been there for 3 months, for 3 years. It just depends. But I've had different people on the team at different times, but it's always been enough time, because either maybe we had less workflow at that point and we didn't need them anymore. And they were like, well, I'm ready to go anyway, And so those kind of things have happened that I've seen in my business. Is that if you worry so much about it, you kind of make a mess of it. But if you kind of let it flow the way it needs to, and you always hire before you think you need it, then it's worked out really well for me that way.
So, and I'm going to have a couple follow-up questions, but real quick, give us like what your company does, Absolute Marketing, right? Because marketing could be anything, right?
So. Oh yeah. It's such a broad concept. So Absolute Marketing is a concept that I created for myself when I was a small business owner with a computer repair company. And I basically devised some formulas for myself to help myself create all of my marketing for an entire year in 5 days. So I would spend a whole week on it in January and then let it ride through December and do the same thing over and over again. And I did this because I was also running 13 networking groups at the time. So I'm running 2 businesses, doing all these things. And I needed to market myself every single day without being on social media 24/7, because I was also networking 2 to 3 times a day. So I ended up doing client work and dealing with my employees and all that stuff. So I developed the formulas, and now that's what I teach to clients, and I help them to create a year's worth of marketing in 5 days.
And this is very similar to what I just actually interviewed somebody who's a comedian. It's doing very similar stuff. So it's not just for business stuff. I think this is also for personal brands. But this is really the reason why I asked you that question, is to parlay into this question, which is like, how does one kind of bulk batch process that in order to have content to spread over a course of time, right?
Yeah, and this definitely is for any kind of brand, whether it's a business brand, a personal brand. Anything you really want to create a lot of content around that you want to be consistent with. So my whole premise for this 5 days is that a lot of business owners, a lot of people who have brands, they're not consistent because life gets in the way. We have other stuff to do. We have the business to run. We have the stuff, we need to create new content for, let's say, the comedy show, whatever. So we need to actually do the work, right? But then there's all this other stuff called marketing, which we also have to do, which is like a full-time job. And a lot of us don't have the money or the expense, to just push out money every single month and say, yeah, that person over there is doing that. And then my personal assistant, we're not quite there yet. So this is a great way to kind of step up your game and get yourself to those points, but not actually have to have all that expense yet. So the batching process, I like to spend the 5 days on 5 pillars. So branding, which means you really hone in with that message. And over each year, sometimes that message changes even slightly, and you need to make sure you're up on that. It's kind of like a living document in a way. It's not like, oh, I picked my brand colors, my logo looks like this. Okay, that stuff can kind of stay the same, but your message might change. You might have a different audience you're serving. You might have added some people or decided you don't want to work with those people anymore, and so you want to make sure that message is really clear. So each year you revisit your brand and you make sure that it's still you, it's still representing the company, it's still representing whoever you're trying to connect with. And then I spend a day on the website because those things need tender love and care 24/7. But I spend a day so that for the whole year, it pretty much can run on its own, might need a few tweaks here and there, but really we give it that nice, fresh update. And then, or build it from scratch if you don't have one. And then the day 3 we spend on social media, and we batch 365 posts in one day. And this is multi-platform, do all the graphics, do all the writing. And the formula I have for that is so simple. When people learn it, they're like, I can do this by myself, right? And I was like, yes, I know. And now you know it. You should do it by yourself. You should go and take the knowledge and run with it. So that's day 3. And then day 4, I work on 12 months of blog posts. Google's a question engine now, not a search engine. So we build blog posts based on that for SEO. And then we do 12 months of email campaigns, which is typically 1 to 2 funnels, like nurture funnels, or we'll build monthly emails out because a lot of the content people have and that they can share is evergreen. And reusing content is sometimes foreign to people because they feel like, oh, well, if somebody's seen it, it'll look like I'm being lazy and not making new content. But the evergreen content should be reshared because somebody who pops into your feed, your funnels, whatever now, they may be different than the people that pop in 6 months from now who are not in there right now. So we want to make sure that we're constantly repeating ourselves so that that message is clear and it gets out to everyone. And then, of course, there'll always be fun, cool stuff that happens off the cuff that you can just post whenever or send out whenever. But that underlying message is consistent and always there every single time you need it to be there. And you don't have to touch it. It's very set it and forget it, hands off.
So it sounds like to me, you clean up everything, make sure the brand's good, website's good, in which I always feel like you have to have a great foundation. Otherwise,
yeah,
who cares if you get people to go to your website if your website doesn't convert them into the customers or clients? And then what I really want to kind of hone a little bit more in is, because you said, I got what you said, but 365 posts in a day. So just go more into that because that sounds crazy. How do you even, I get the concepts and perhaps, well, actually I'll just let you take it a little bit more from there. Cause that just sounds, to me to do 20 posts in a day is hard,
Well, I have an ebook that I wrote. It's called 6 Months of Social Media in a Day. Cause you can kind of break it up however you want, but I know I do 12 with clients cause I push them, I make them do it. I get it all in. It's 8-hour day. So it's a full day, right? It is a full 8-hour day. And this is a full 40-hour week we're talking about. We're not talking about you give me some stuff, I go work on it and I show you something. No, we're in tandem working together. So let's say we're doing social media and we're sitting there, we're doing the brainstorming first. And the brainstorming part of it, and you have to do this whether you're doing it on your own, you're doing it with a buddy, you need to have someone you're going to be accountable to because this is the hardest day of all of them. So you sit down and you start brainstorming. I like to do things first in the social media book that I wrote. We need to know where you're posting, right? Where's your audience? What social media are they on? And how do we know that? We can look up demographics for Facebook. Let's say, we'll just pick one. Demographics for Facebook 2020 or 2021, whichever. And you put that in Google, or you can, my book has it in it. And one of the things that I put in my book specifically is the half-life of a post. And I'm sure, marketers know what this is, but sometimes regular people don't because I didn't know what it was until I read about it. And it is basically how long a post lives on the feed, in the cycle, in the loop, until it's buried so far that it's not in the feed anymore. Maybe on your page still, but it's not in the feed. So for Facebook, it's only 30 minutes. So if you spend more than 30 minutes writing a post or creating a graphic or dealing with when should I post it? And you're working on that one post for more than 30 minutes, okay, now we've just lost time, right? Because people aren't even going to see it for more than 30 minutes. So we spend about 2 to 3 minutes on each post. And it's because progress over perfection, right? They don't have to be perfect. We want to be clear. We want to be professional. We want to make sure we're saying the right things. We're not being lazy about it, but we don't want to perfectionize it and go too far with it. So it's about getting the content out there, because a lot of the content that I like to post and getting that, brainstorming thing down is that you have all this stuff in your head. It's already up there. Unless you're doing a statistic, you might need to look it up. Okay, that takes 5 minutes, and you can get all this stuff from your head and it's all there because you do this every day. It's your job, it's your business, it's your life. And we can actually create all those posts really quickly. One of the things I like to do is I like to find all the fun holidays. This fills up your calendar really quick. And people do like that. They do resonate with that, especially if you're on your lives and you're talking about tacos, or you're in your comedy show and you're talking about tacos. You should have every taco related holiday on your feed. It should all be in there. Taco Tuesdays. You should have Cinco de Mayo. You should have all the taco related days there because it's something that goes with your brand, right? And, some people talk about cats. Some people talk, whatever it is, that like little funky thing that goes with your brand, you should put that in there. And then that fills in a lot of your days. And whether you want to do federal holidays or national holidays, international holidays. Sometimes with my, I have some home healthcare companies I work with. There's a ton of medical holidays. There's probably a medical holiday 2 to 3 times a week, every day, every week of the year. So they have 2 or 3 days a week already filled, just done. They could put every medical holiday they want. So, that fills up a ton of your days. Now we've got some other days to fill in, right? We still got 365 posts. We might found maybe 50 to 60 holidays. Okay, so now we got 310 posts, 15 posts. So let's think about what we're going to do for those. What about known events? You're going to go to that trade show. Well, we used to anyway, right? We're getting back to that, right? So we're going to go to a trade show. We're going to go to an event. We're going to be a sponsor of something. We're going to be on a summit. We're going to be on a podcast. Right? We know these things are happening. They're coming up. And a lot of times we know them annually. So we can put those in and we can put a couple prep posts to kind of lead up to those days. We can also put in our birthdays of our employees, our birthday. People like that stuff. It's very connecting to the brand, gives people that connection to say, I know this person, I want to do business with them, right? Know, like, and trust. We've got the know part down. You know what holidays we're in favor of. You know what holidays we want to celebrate. You know when our birthdays are, right? You know the anniversary of our business, those kind of things. Then we look at, we've got a few more days in there. Now we're down to around 300, right? Then we look at, are you actually selling on your page? Most people don't. Most people do not sell because they have been told 80-20. You got to do the 80-20 rule. You can't sell unless it's 20% of the posts you do. And so people pull back and they pull way back. And they might post 1 sales post a month, maybe, if they even remember. And so what I say is you write 6 really solid sales posts, or like 1 for each product or 1 for each service, right? You might have 10 services. Okay, 10 posts. You write really solid, short, simple sales posts that link directly back to your website. And then you repeat them over and over and over. You might put 1 a week and repeat them every 10 weeks, every 6 weeks. No one will get sick of it. I promise you. I promise no one will get sick of it. Then you also write 6 to 10 questions. 6 to 10 questions. You get questions all the time. Your FAQ page probably has 15 questions on it. And you've probably answered the same thing every single day to the 10, 15 different people. Now we got those 6 questions or those 10 questions, how many ever number you want, and you repeat them once a week, every week. 6 weeks, start over. Week 7 is question 1. Week 8 is question 2. Like, you keep repeating it on repeat over and over and over till the end of the year. Now we got a few days left, right? We got some holes in our calendar. And now we sit there and go, okay, we got a lot of holes on Mondays. We got like 30 Mondays to fill. What if we did Motivational Monday? Okay, I know all of you have 30 posts tagged in Instagram on your desktops that are like those inspirational quote things, right? You have them saved on your Pinterest boards. Go get them. Let's retype them into Canva, put your colors on them, put your little logo in the corner, done. Right? So these are the kind of things that are so, so simple. If you can break it down to something so simple, this will take you like 8 hours. I do it all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's developing systems. A lot of times for social media, what I like to say is, I do a little different approach, but I do like to have kind of take this big task and let's break it down, into these smaller, easily consumable tasks. What about somebody, because so a lot of people spend a lot of money on Facebook. What about, how do you recommend, or maybe that's not even a place where you come in, but okay, so you got all these posts, what if they have a budget? Where do they put that budget, right? Or do they just pay you?
Well, they can pay me for the one day. That would be great.
Yeah,
but I think the budget comes in when you want to focus on something. So whether you want to focus on nurturing, so you want to get someone, you pay someone, or, you can take time for yourself and kind of pay yourself, right? To go in there and nurture in groups, answer questions, comment on things. I mean, I have probably answered thousands of questions in Facebook groups because I want to be active. I want to nurture those relationships, and also engaging on other people's pages, engaging in other ways, doing lives, those kind of things. And if you have a budget and you're like, you know what, we have this course coming out, we really want to promote it. It depends on the price point of courses and things like that. It depends on how successful they'll be with Facebook ads. You can sell through Facebook ads, but it can also be very much a money pit. If you're going to hire any Facebook ad person, and I hire other ad people because I don't do it myself, I recommend finding someone who has previously worked for Facebook. They are out there. And they will tell you, I used to work for Facebook, because they are the only ones I've found, because I've hired a lot of different people. They're the only ones I've found that actually know enough of the insider information to kind of utilize it to your benefit. So it's still kind of a money pit. You're still taking that gamble. But I would say definitely like engagement, nurturing, and then again, doing some ads if it seems like it might be a fit for the product or the company.
So, and I think it's great that you brought this all down into 1 week, but how'd you get there, right? Of instead of saying, let's do this over 30 days or once every month or whatever it would be, like, because it sounds like a sprint to me. And I've had another person on this podcast, Nathan Ryan, that his idea is we're all getting in one room and we're all knocking it out right now, like 5 days, 1 month, whatever it be, as opposed to just letting it drag forever, right?
Well, in 2016, one of those years, it's all running together. In 2017, I was doing the 30-day website. I'd been doing that for years. That's the way I was taught. That's what the industry norm is. It's 6 weeks, 4 weeks. Sometimes if it was a big website, I'd say, oh, that's going to take 3 months. I was charging double, thousands of dollars for one site, just the site, nothing else. And at the time I was charging $3,500 for the site. I was building in WordPress. It was taking me time. I would show them the stuff and they would tell me feedback and then I would fix it and then, bring it back. So there's all this back and forth. I tried Content Snare. I tried Basecamp. I tried all the tools that are supposed to be where the client puts the stuff in and they get it to you and then you build the website and everybody's happy, right? No. My clients were getting me stuff day 29 of our 30-day contract. I was on a time basis. That's how I did my time. So it's $3,500. You got 30 days. First week is this. Second week is this. Milestone, whatever. And I was like, this is not working. I was having health issues. I was stressed to the max. I couldn't even function barely. I was depressed. And it was May. And I said to my husband, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I have to literally find a job because I can't do this. And my business was successful. I had clients, but it was so difficult for me to maintain that lifestyle. So he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I had been building sites in a day because they would get me all their stuff. I would drop everything for that day. I would say, guess what? Are you on call? Because I'm going to do this right now. And they would say, yeah, we're on call all day. So they're like, we got to get this done because now it's crunch time, right? We got to have it done by tomorrow. So I'm in there. I'm building stuff. Go call them. Okay, what do you think about this? Go look at it. Okay, great. And then back and forth all day long. And I said to him one night, I was like, I wish I could just get them in a room and turn my computer around and say, does this look good to you? Great. Okay, moving on. And then they would say, well, how do I write my bio? What am I supposed to write for this? Well, I don't know how to write an intro. I don't know they didn't know what they were doing. And it was because the guidance that you can give in, for a website project is minimal because you're not involved in, well, what is your business about? And let's talk about the brand. And especially if you're not doing the branding, that's even more of a disconnect. So I said, you know what? The thing that people need is they need a brand. They need a good one. They need one that resonates with them and their clients. They need to know who they are first. They don't even know that. They don't know what they're doing. Then they need a solid website that's going to share that message and actually tell people what they're doing. And then they need solid social media that's going to run for them so they don't have to touch it. They don't have to try and write stuff because that's the hardest part for most people is the writing. And I said, I can do that in 3 days. one day each, 8 hours each, sit in a room with them. And I called it 24-hour business. And I said, we're going to spend 24 hours together, which is 3 days, 8 hours. And we're going to knock all this stuff out. And I took everything off my website. I took everything down, all my services, and I just put up that. And I was like, I'm cutting the price in half. Instead of $3,500 for like just your website and it takes 30 days, it's $1,500 for one day. That was my original pricing. And I said, you can get 3 days, and I had a little discount, whatever. First person that called me, she was like, where do I sign? I was like, I've never sold anything this fast before. Usually there was a whole process and a whole, convincing process and persuasion process. And she was like, I'm ready to do this. Like, this is so awesome. I can have this done in 3 days, and then I can do all the other crap I need to do. And I worked with her, and it was the first one. So I was so nervous, of course. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm ruining my life. And it was so fun. I was free because I wasn't enslaved by this whole process that I was chained to my computer for 30 days. It was 3 days. Every day we finished each project on time. I learned a lot of stuff on how to streamline what I was doing, how to explain it better. And from then I've just done it. I've just kept doing it. And I started to see the other pieces fall into place over time as the year went on, and I started to add days. And then eventually I came to the 5-day piece where it's all 5 pieces. And I'm like, if you have these 5 pieces, you can market anything. And so that's when I came up with the 5 days. But really it started with just pure frustration and pure stress that I had to fix. And I just fixed it.
Well, and I think when you get that shorter timeline, when you tell somebody 6 weeks, 30 days, whatever it is, I think that you don't get in their priority list is very high because they're running their business, right? As opposed to 3 days, 5 days, 1 day, whatever it is. That, okay, I'm going to make you the highest priority because I'm paying you and you're not coming back tomorrow. We got to be done, right? So we were talking earlier, and you have this really fun goal. I don't know if it's for 2020, but I think it is. But that you're going to be on 100 podcasts in 2020. 1, why? And 2, where you at? What number are you at nowadays?
This is number 89, 88, somewhere in there.
Wow.
So we're getting close.
Yeah, you're there.
I'm getting close. Yep. And I've turned it into 100 media appearances because some of the podcasts I've been on never aired. So it's like that kind of has happened. So I'm kind of like, okay, I got a couple other media appearances I could throw in to make it. But yeah, I did this goal because I was on a couple podcasts last year and I really loved it. And then, I was networking a lot. So I didn't really have time to always be home and in front of the computer with the mic and everything to be on a podcast, for all the people that I wanted to be on their podcasts. Because I was out networking. I was trying to build business. And so when Corona hit and I was like, I can't network now. What am I going to do? So I turned to podcasting because I knew I wanted to spend time on it. So now I had all this time. And people were at home and they were in their studios and they had their mics. And I thought, okay, this is perfect. Started joining the groups. I started making the profiles. I did my one sheet. I did all those things you're supposed to do. And I started to just apply. And I applied for like 10 or 15 a day. And I thought, I'm just going to throw it out there and see what happens. I did this for like 3 or 4 days and I started getting response. It was just crazy. And I wouldn't get all of them. I wouldn't even get responses from all of them, but I started getting a lot of responses. And I thought, this is really great. And then as I would meet people, we would have a 15-minute chat to get started. And then we would have the recording later. And I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've just replaced networking. This is my new networking. I'm able to meet all these amazing people and hear all their amazing stories and talk to them about what I do, but on a totally different level than networking is. Because networking, you're really there to you're there to educate and you're there to help as well, but you're kind of secretly there to I need to get some clients, right? And so this was so much different because it felt more mutual. It felt more like what networking should be. And I was like, well, I used to network 2 to 3 times a day. So I guess I'm going to podcast 2 to 3 times a day. And I just started applying for more and more and more. And I started booking them into my calendar. And today, this is let me check. I think this is my last podcast. Yep, my last podcast of the day. This is number 5 for today.
Oh, my. Okay, but a lot of people would say that, okay, great, you're networking, but so what, right? How do you think that something like being on a podcast relates to your professional career?
Well, I have always looked up to people who make podcasts and who are on them because it takes a level of, I would say, maturity to be an interviewer. You have to be a certain kind of person to be an interviewer. I am a horrible interviewer because I have too many things running in my head.
And it's not easy, and it's really hard, as I just did. It's really hard to not talk. You want to talk the whole time, but I'm always supposed to 10, 15% over here. So
I know. And that's why I'm like, kudos to you. Like I am not as good a person as you. And so that's why I teach all the time. That is why I'm on seminars all the time. But I really do look up to them. And I'm like, if you can be a good interviewer, then it makes you the authority. And I learned this when I was running all the networking groups. The networking groups were not about me being up there and speaking a bit to everybody. I always had a guest speaker. There was always somebody else coming in, kind of being the interviewer, right? I didn't have to interview them, thank goodness. They just talked by themselves. But it was that thing that says, I'm an authority. I'm picking the best people to be here. And you know that because I'm the one in charge, right? And so I learned that from networking. And I think that that's really kind of come into the podcasting world where the interviewers have this authority. Whether they have 500 listeners or 5 listeners or 5,000 listeners, it doesn't matter. They have authority because they're saying, this is my space. I've carved it out. You're listening because you obviously think I have something that's important to say or important to hear, right? And I'm also picking the best people to be on my show. And so whenever I get to be on a podcast for my professional career, one, just personally, I'm honored because that means I made it past some kind of bar. It couldn't have been too low, right? And so I'm glad that I actually made it through like that process. And then on a professional level, it kind of allows me to get that street cred, It's like when you write that book, which I'm working on, by the way. And when you get on TV, which I've been on TV before, and you tell someone, I was on TV the other day. What? You were on TV? Like it's kind of this elite club that you get to be a part of. But it's not because you didn't work hard to get there. And it's not because you didn't have something important to say. It's the opposite of that. You actually have something important to say and you did work hard to get there. So it kind of shows that you have done the work, you've paid your dues, you've put in all that time and effort. And now you're actually on a podcast where someone is saying, okay, here's your 5 minutes. Tell us exactly what is important and why we need to know it's important. So for me, podcasting is kind of that, like I said, that social proof, that credibility that says, all right, Elizabeth has been on 100 podcasts. That means 100 people said that she was like her information was worthy enough to be on their show. That is huge for me. That is humbling for me. And for me to be able to share what you guys are doing, you and some of the other people we've talked about, we have some mutual friends, like for me to be able to share what they're doing with the people that I know who've maybe never even heard of you because you're like in another state, whatever. That's so cool for me because now I'm like, hey, like Darren's podcast is pretty awesome. You should totally listen to it,
And on the side, you were talking kind of on the interview side. I mean, I'm probably 10 to 30 hours per episode that we put into it. So, it is kind of one of those things that there is a bar to be passed. And not saying that my bar is like crazy high or anything like that, but, it is interesting. So, it's an investment and I completely agree with a lot of what you said there. I do have a question about it. What's the craziest, most memorable, worst, whatever experience that you've had since you've been on so many podcasts?
Yes. I have a really, really awesome experience. And then I have a really, really like, oh my. So there was a podcast I was on. It was a live show. It was on Facebook and it was a 15-minute, real short. So I get in the little, room. It was on StreamYard. So they had like the little, waiting room and I'm in the waiting room and the guy brings me on. And he's just like, oh my gosh. And he's like, not even looking at me, not saying anything to me, not saying, hey, Elizabeth, how are you? I'm so-and-so. No, he is just like freaking out. And I said, are you okay? And he goes, the last guy that was on, and I think he had like a 5-minute buffer between his show. He's like, the last guy that was on, I said something to him and he hung up on me and I don't know what happened. And I got to apologize. I don't even know what I said. And he was freaking out. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, we need to snap out of this and like fix this. So he goes, okay. So then he goes on and he says to me, or he says to the audience, he's like, well, so this last guy, he hung up on me and I don't know what happened. So he tells the whole story, even though they just watched it. And he brings me on and he asked me 2 questions and he's like, well, we're out of time. And then that was it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened?
Yeah.
So it was pretty crazy.
It's like,
But the best experience I had.
Thanks for nothing, right? Thanks
Right.
for nothing.
I
Wasting
kept
my
my
time,
little
right?
smile on though. I tried to be
Yeah.
positive.
It's tough.
But the best one I think I ever had, it was the guy said it was going to be 2 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, 2 hours of an interview. And he asked such in-depth questions. It became one of my best interviews I've ever had. And he went back into my childhood and he talked about my family. And it was just so good because it got to show a side of me that I don't get to normally show on podcasts. And I now use it in my bio section as like, if you really want to get to know Elizabeth, here, listen to this 2 hours.
That's great. So that's your 2020 goal. Like, what you got? Any crazy goals for the future?
Well, my husband just went full time in his business. So we're now trying to become a little bit more location fluid, I guess, so that we can work from wherever we want to work from. And my sister is going to be graduating from Liberty University, and she's going to be coming to work with me next year, probably. So I'm very excited about that. I'm writing my book. So I've got a couple little things in the works, but I never go too far out with my plans. I like to keep it a little more fluid and see what happens.
I love it. So what's something like, okay, so now you look back, you've done all these businesses and all this. Any advice you'd give like your 16-year-old self that you would know today to give some advice for?
I think, see, when I was 16, I was building websites, and I loved it because it was something that my parents didn't know how to do and nobody around me really knew how to do. It was something only I knew.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like a cool feeling. You're like, I know something and the adults don't.
Yeah. So from like 6th grade on, actually, for me, like, but which was always fun because I was techie and I was cool on the internet before that was a thing.
Right. And there was all these cool things you could do, and you were like making something I always felt like I was making something out of nothing. Like there was a blank page and I typed some code into it, and all of a sudden there was color and lights flashing and all kinds of stuff. And I think with that was, my parents allowed me to take these classes when I was young, and they allowed me to explore that side of things and to go to coding classes and things like that. And I think that for people who are younger, if you have a passion for something, whether it's marine biology, coding, like I don't even care, chef, if you want to be a chef, if you like love food, doesn't matter what it is, find the community spaces where they allow you to learn these things. Find the online spaces, find the hands-on tutorials where you can cook along, or, if you want to learn how to knit or whatever, any of those things, go and do it. You're a kid, right? You're young, you have this time, and you might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, but really you're not even busy yet. Don't even worry. But like take the opportunity and embrace some of these things early on, so that when you do get to become an adult, you don't say, man, I wish I would have learned how to knit. I wish I would have learned to, bake that cake or whatever. You can actually say, no, I did that. I was on radio shows when I was 13, 14 years old. I wrote for newspapers when I was 15, 16. I did things that other kids didn't get to do because my parents, they kind of let me have that free reign a little bit. They were like, oh, you want to be on a radio show? Okay, go ahead. And they went with me and stuff, but it was just kind of that freedom to be able to explore those things. So if you have that ability to, like I said, find those community classes, call the radio station, say, hey, can I do some of your voiceovers for you? Like go for it. You can, the only thing they can say is no, So I say just go for those things you really want to be a part of and have some fun experiences along the way. Even if, you don't end up not liking it in the end, that's okay too.
It sounds like your parents provided a big role there, but any other mentors or books that kind of helped you along the way during this path?
Yeah, so I had a college professor that was very much into women being in coding, and I went for a web programming degree when I went to college, and he very much encouraged me because there was times that I didn't think I was going to make it through the classes. They were extremely hard, and that was not the direction I wanted to go, but you had to learn it anyway, So he would encourage me a lot, and that was really great. His name was Mark Thomas. And then when I got into business, I started reading, all the business books and all that stuff, and one of the ones that really resonated with me was Profit First. Because the business, the finance side of business is so much different than when you just say, well, I can run a business. I can market myself. I can get employees. I can get clients. I can do all those things. You kind of intuit them, right? But the finance side, it's not intuitive. For me, it's not. I'm a creative. It's not there. And so reading Profit First gave me that boost and that confidence to say, no, I can do the finance side. I can understand this. I can learn it and not feel so lost and in the dark about that. Because really, when your finances are they're dark to you or they're mysterious, it makes it much harder to be an entrepreneur. So that book really, really helped me a lot.
I agree. A lot of people skim over that piece, and no matter where your revenue's at, if your profit or just your books in general are in order, it could be very anxiety driven. What about, with COVID disrupting a lot of lives, right? You can take this whether you want to do with business owners or even just people who have lost their jobs. What are some advice that you have that people could do right now to help them?
Well, I was actually dealing with this the other day. I had a client who was in a very bad job situation. And because of COVID, he didn't want to leave. He was like, I want to start a business, but I'm not sure. And we were doing some coaching. And he said, but it's so bad where I am. It's the culture. It's just so many different things. He's like, I have to go. Excuse me. And I said to him, can you walk? And he said, well, yeah, it's going to be a little scary and a little tentative. And he has a mortgage and a family and all this stuff. And I said, if you thought you could do it, would you do it? Not about money. It's not about all that. If you thought you could do it, would you do it? If you thought there was less risk, would you do it? And he said, well, yeah, I've always wanted to do it. I said, well, can you make it work? Is it something within you that you're able to do? Is it in you? And he said, well, yeah, I really want to do this. And I said, then do it. You have to follow that gut feeling. You have to follow your heart on this. And it wasn't about putting his family on the street or anything. That wasn't going to happen. And he did. He walked out. And he struggled because he had all these business ideas and he still wasn't sure which one to pick. And I said to him, same thing my mom said to me when I first started my business, pick 2 things you like. Tell me 2 things. Just go back to that simple, just say 2 things off the top of your head. Don't even think about it. And he did. And I was like, there's your job. And he was just floored. It was awesome. And he's doing it. He's 3 weeks in and he's got 2 clients. And it just made me so happy to see somebody who took the leap. He knew if it came to, I got a mortgage to pay, I got people to feed, I got, house to take care of, I'm going to make it happen. Because when that rug is kind of pulled out, that safety net is gone, we really see what we're made of. And we really see that we can do these things and we can make them work. And I've never seen a person have that safety net removed and then they fall. They always make it. They always walk that tightrope and they are like on the other side all of a sudden. So that's why I asked him, I was like, do you think you can do it? And he's like, well, yeah. I was like, if you really had to, would you make it work? And he's like, well, yeah, of course. If I just make it work, then do it. So that's my advice. If you think in your mind that if it came to it and you had to feed your family, you had to pay your mortgage, you'd figure it out, then you can actually do this.
I love it. So what does success look like for you?
For me, it is about enjoying what I have when I have it, because when you're starting out in business, it seems like you're working all the time and all that stuff. But at the same time, you're also building something. You're experiencing all of that, great emotion and, all that stuff. So now where I am now, I'm more successful. I have more clients. I have more responsibilities. I have more stresses. But also, I have more funds to do the things I want to do, and I have those kind of things in place as well. So I'm enjoying doing that, but I also enjoyed when I was back there working 60, 80-hour weeks and meeting people and the thrill of building things and creating. And so I guess I'm just kind of the person where I feel successful when I am moving forward and whatever that looks like. So I guess I've been called successful, which I appreciate because I'm like, oh, recognition, woohoo, because everybody likes to be recognized. But at the same time, we don't stop and look at our own success. We never, if you're an entrepreneur, you're just like full steam ahead. Wait, what? We did something great back there? I can't look at that right now. So I will sit now and I will look back and go, dang, I am really good, and then I'll also know, okay, this is what's tomorrow. This is what's moving forward. This is what's getting us to that next level. So that up there, when I'm ahead up there, I can sit back and go, dang, I'm doing pretty awesome. That was great, So I kind of seek success wherever it is.
Any regrets?
I don't really think so. If an opportunity has come by, I take it. And I've done that pretty much my whole life. If somebody says, hey, do you want to go to New York with this person you don't really know, but they're your client and you kind of trust them a little bit for 5 days? Sure. Sounds great. Let's do it. So, I've always just kind of taken those opportunities and just said, sure, why not?
So pre-COVID, you said that you were doing a ton of networking events.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think people get really, really fearful of those or hate it. There's a lot of people don't like it. And they can be really valuable, but any advice you would give somebody when they go to those events, how to maximize their time, whatever it might be, wherever you want to take it?
Consistency. Consistency is key. I've seen people come and go in networking events because I went to so many, and they would come and go and they'd say, oh, well, I can't go to that group. I'm so busy, or yeah, that group was great, but and they'd always have some excuse. Or they would show up and they would say something totally different every single time. You're like, wait a minute, what company do you work for again? What do you do? Because it was never consistent. Now, the people that showed up and then they would start to say their tagline and everyone in the room would say the tagline with them, those are the people that got the most business. Those are the people that got the most out of it, because they allowed everyone to get to know them by repeating themselves. And it made so that when they would walk into a room, you knew who they were. And that's one of the things I did a few years ago when I first started my business. I went and I networked 3 times a day for a year. And my goal was not to get as many clients as I could get. My goal was to be one of the most well-known people in my city. And yes, I networked 3 times a day for a year. It was exhausting. But at the end of that, it was a women's luncheon, and there was like 80 women there. I was the last one to stand up because everybody got 30 seconds. It was a long lunch. And I stood up at the end and I'd heard everyone spiel. And I said, does anybody not know who I am? Because I knew everyone in the room. And this one lady, she kind of timidly raised her hand. And I said, I'll just talk to you later, dear. And I sat down and everyone was laughing. They were all clapping. It was hilarious because they all knew that they already knew me. I had been out there so much. And that was kind of when I felt like I'm the most well-known person in Jacksonville. People knew who I was before I even handed them my card. They'd look at my card and go, oh, I've seen this before. And I'd never met them. I didn't know who they were. So, doing those kind of things with networking, I went to the extreme level with it and networked 3 times a day like a maniac. But, I did it with a goal in mind. And if you network with no goal, or you podcast, you go on all these 100 podcasts with no goal in mind, then there's no point to it. But if you go on with a goal and a vision that's not about sales, it's not about, getting the most clients or anything like that. It's about maybe a personal goal. Like for me, I want to be well known in the city. I want to have that influence. For me with these 100 podcasts, I want to have that street cred where people go, she hit the bar. She went over the bar 100 times in 1 year. That's crazy. She must know what she's talking about. So those kind of things, whether it's personal or business goal, you have to have a goal in mind, especially for networking. It's going to make it easier. You're not going to put the pressure on yourself of, if I go to this event and I don't get a client, oh my gosh, waste of time, right? So it's about that long-term goal that you can set ahead of yourself for all the events.
And it's kind of opposite what people think. They think that if they say the same thing about themselves over and over, that they're fake or something. And I always kind of try to relate it back. Like I help a lot of people with like the resumes just for fun, And I was like, okay, first thing we're doing your power statement, which is kind of what you're saying, to say your power statement over and over, and then bullet points of what you do. If you were selling a product, that's what you would do. Every customer would walk through the door, you would say the same thing. You wouldn't try to come up with something new every single time. So I think you could do the same thing for yourself. But my question to you would be like, how do you make time for this? How do you make this like a priority to be on these podcasts or beforehand, these networking events before COVID came about? Like, how does that even work?
You have to put it in the calendar. That's the first key. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist to me. And if it's in the calendar, I feel obligated. It's just kind of how I've adapted to this weird way of doing things. But I feel almost obligated, like, well, I told them I would be there. I told them I would do it, And if I'm going to a networking event, I'll tell someone I'm going. It's kind of my little way of like assuring, well, I told so-and-so to go, so now I kind of have to go. Because even if they don't show up, I said I would go. So if they show up and I'm not there, then I look like the flake, So it's really about that accountability. And I like the podcast idea because you're here. And if I don't show up, you're going to be like, what the heck? Where's she? But if I'm going to a networking event and there's not really that connection, like I said, I tell someone to be there, or I say, hey, go with me. Or sometimes I just find a group where I really liked it. I just like being around the people. I liked having lunch with them. And so I don't know. I love being around people. I know there's people that don't like that so much, or they're not so into it, those introverts. But it's really a sense of fuel for me and gets me to have more energy and also to listen to what they're saying. So when I'm in a situation like this, I'm on. Like, I am bubbly and let's talk and la la la. But when I'm in a more of a networking setting, I might be the quietest person there until it's my turn, or until I have the opportunity to speak, because I really want to listen to what other people are saying, so that when I do speak, I can say something just for them. I can say something that only they will understand, or that they will be able to resonate with. Because I'm not there for everyone. I'm there for that one or two people that I hear say something. I'm like, oh, when I talk, I'm going to speak to her. And it's not really I'm speaking to her, I'm saying it for the room, but I'm really tailoring that message to one or two people. So I kind of use these little tricks to make it a little more fun for myself, but also at the same time, like you said, you got to be consistent with the message and you got to stick with it.
So my last question, and I end every podcast with this question, is how would you like to be remembered?
As somebody who helped other small businesses build their families and their communities. And that's what I've seen.
I love it. Well, Elizabeth, I really appreciate you for being on the Establishing Your Empire podcast. I really appreciate your time. And I guess hopefully we got you up to about 90 podcasts for this year.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really great interview. And I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation. So thank you.
All right. Cheers.